Hello, hi Keith. How's everything on your end?
Oh, things are good here.
Yeah, the weather has been extremely hot in our area, in our corner in New Jersey. I've been sweating a lot, and hopefully it'll take a little bit of a turn to the cooler now. Marcus is not with us today. He had unfortunately to tend to a family medical thing, and we wish him all the best and hope to see him next week. And today we'll have a couple of topics, probably a shorter segment, shorter program. Hi everybody in the chat. Keith, you wanna talk about what we're covering today?
Sure. The big thing we're going to cover is the Uyghurs in China, and then we're going to have a little bit about a fire in Vancouver or north of Vancouver that happened over the week, and that'll be about it. Uh, yeah, it's been hot here. Monday was really hot, and after that things got better, and yeah, hottest day ever in Seattle. Anyway, today's episode on the report on the Uyghurs was kind of generated by you. You kind of triggered me about a month ago. You just kind of casually asked me what I knew about them, and my answer was that I'd heard so many different things. I really didn't know what to think, and you know, about as soon as that came out of my mouth, I realized that, well, that's exactly the sheep attitude. That's what you're supposed to think. That's what all the confusion in the news is all about. And um, and that triggered me because I've always had an interest in kind of this sort of thing. I was very interested in the Tibetan oppression. Some years ago when that was in the news, I had gotten just had been reading some stuff about Tibetan Buddhism, and then I find out the Tibetan people are being repressed by China. So I kind of got into that, and so it had been on the back of my mind to learn more about the Uyghurs, and so in the last couple of weeks I really have, and I'm not really seeing the show yet. Let's see. I have to fire thing. Oh, there I am. Okay, I can see. Okay, now I'm monitoring the actual YouTube. For some reason, the meeting's not coming up. Anyway, so now I we can start. So let's go to the first slide, and that would be slide 23, and we'll start from there. And I guess I'll just have to start talking and remember that there's a delay. So if I wait for the slide to come up on YouTube, it'll
Correct.
never be there.
Yep.
So I'll just have to, you know, assume that you're anticipating me real well. I did check the videos that you thought were blocked on YouTube, and I think it was just because I had them checked private. So we can try to play all those, and some of those I made. So I do want to play them. Okay. So Uyghurs, what Uyghurs rather? Who are they? Well, they're not Chinese. Ethnically, they're very much like Turkish people. Um, in Central Asia, where there's this whole bunch of countries. It's a large area. I refer to as the stands. There's Turkestan, there's Afghanistan, there's all kinds of stands around there. And what the people are is, they're the original inhabitants of Central Asia, and culturally, they're very close to the people that are in Turkey. And what do I have next? So staying on that first slide for a second, the slide on the left is a slide that shows the location of about 460 camps. And the story is that there are these concentration camps in Zing. I can't say it right now for some reason. This area, this East Turkmenistan area, um, and
Jinzan province.
uh, what's that,
Jinzan
Amos?
province.
Yeah, thank you. I still every time you're going to have to say it. Okay, so one thing about what's been happening to the American news is we hear reports, and they're never followed up, and they're vague, and so we get this. impression that it maybe is going on, maybe it isn't going on. Well, I've spent enough time on this to know that it is going on, and the world needs to pay more attention to it. It does actually have implications for us, and we'll be getting into that. Um, so what's happened is because the Chinese people are mostly Han Chinese, which is a very specific ethnic group of Chinese, 90%. And there were ethnic issues through the years with the people in Xinjiang. And they're looked down upon by the rest of the Chinese people. They're given poor jobs. And so there's kind of there's an ethnic tension. And about 2010, there was a serious riot in one of the cities because frankly, the dominant Chinese have been oppressing these people for quite a few times. They don't get the right jobs. They're considered to be inferior. And so there was a riot, and that led to the government deciding that they would take care of the problem by eliminating the Uyghurs. And so we'll be discussing genocide and what it is, and why it does apply to this case. And I know it does. I've gotten into it, and I'll explain myself. And yeah, so it's quite an eye-opening report, and let's get into it. So what do we have next? Next, we have a slide that Amos, you put this one in. So this one's new to me. Let's just play it and see what's there.
Yep. All right, here we go.
In a far corner of northwestern China, a car drives along a wall lined with barbed wire, heading towards what looks like a standard apartment complex. Access here is restricted, and the camera person is filming secretly. Because this is no ordinary residence. It's part of a contentious labor resettlement program run by the Chinese government to extend state control over Muslim minorities, mostly Uyghurs, by moving them from one part of China to work in another. This covert, low-quality footage that we've adjusted to reveal some details and obscure others gives us some rare insights into how people in this program live and are indoctrinated. Over the last few years, the mass incarceration of more than 1 million Uyghurs and Kazakhs by the Chinese government has led to international outrage. These labor programs are part of that larger story. Let's take a closer look at the compound we showed you at the beginning. It's in Xinjiang, in the northern city of Quaitun, where the population is mostly China's Han ethnic majority. But the workers in the compound are Uyghurs and other minorities, transferred there from their homes in Hotan and Kashgar, hundreds of miles away. At the Quaitun complex, there are multiple dormitories. We see that right around the time the transfer started in 2017, a security checkpoint and another building, a cafeteria, were built at the site. The camera person is now shooting inside of the cafeteria. We can see the compound's residents. They all work as street cleaners. A sign describing the program calls them Kashgar and Hotan surplus labor. It also lists instructions for how they should conduct themselves, and another poster offers guidelines on how to interact with the local population. This program, and others like it, have led to the relocation of hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs away from their homes and families. But government propaganda openly promotes these as poverty alleviation initiatives.
促进喀什和田地区城乡妇孺劳动力转移就业，增加城乡妇孺劳动力收入，体现了党中央、习近平总书记和自治区党委政府对喀什和田地区各族群众的关心关怀。
What's at stake here is about more than just putting people into labor programs. The bigger goal is to turn Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities away from their own heritage to be more in line with the rest of communist China. Back at the compound, the rules strictly limit when and where the workers can go. We hear about this as a camera person meets residents in the sleeping quarters.
那你像你们这个晚上，比如说你不在食堂吃饭，你可以出去吃饭吗？
中午，没事没事，中午吃可以。
不是，我说你来了1年了，你回去过没有？看过孩子没有？
孩子没有。
This man was pressured to come here a year earlier, leaving his family, a wife and young child, behind. His life here includes mandatory Mandarin classes in the evenings. And despite the government's claim that they are lifting these workers out of poverty, he says he's only making a third of what he did back home.
你这个每个月发多少钱呢
？2000。
像你没来之前，你在家里面收入多少钱啊？
去年的2万一天。
Yarkand County is the home he left behind. For Uyghurs in towns like these, the future is becoming increasingly uncertain. Because the decision whether to stay or go is often no longer in their hands.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah,
I won't say that's a bad report. I won't say it's a good one, Amos. You know, I've watched a lot of reports on this stuff, and a lot of them spend a lot of time, too much time, trying to make everybody happy. That report gave the impression that things were somewhat voluntary, like this man chose to go to this camp. No, these people are being arrested. Families are being broken up. A organized plan to eliminate the Uyghurs as a national identity is well underway. And let's go on to the next slide, because I will say that clip does dovetail nicely with everything else we're going to do here. Okay, now this one I put together, it's got 3 still pictures, and these pictures, you know, I think each one's worth about 1,000 words, and so you have 3,000 words saying that the camps actually exist. And then up in the right is a very short clip that just is off the front of a report that Anderson Cooper made, and I did some things to this clip, and I'm not pleased with what Anderson Cooper did. It looks like a really good report. When I first saw it, you know, I thought, oh, interesting, very good, and then I realized it was actually pretty insidious. So let's play it, and then I'll explain myself why I think so.
Before we continue, I just wanted.
What's that?
Keith, before we continue, I just wanted to check. Joyce, welcome. But is our volume any better? You guys hear us? Please indicate in the chat so we know that the volume level is okay. Regarding that video, oddly enough, since you've put together the presentation, the videos that you've included have been removed. Which I found very strange, but...
well, try it again, because last time I tried to play it, it worked.
Milquetoast.
Toward ethnic Uyghur Muslims has split up thousands of families. The U.S. and other countries have labeled China's treatment of Uyghurs as genocide.
Milquetoast.
China denies the human rights abuse allegations, claiming their actions are justified to combat religious extremism and prevent terrorism.
Okay. They're justified? No.
Right.
Yeah, it's not justified at all. And what Anderson did there, it's for what it is, it's a good report. They identified 2 families, and they showed that they were being broken up. But they did pick 2 families that you would have a little bit of issue on, not with the people in the families, but one family was a couple that had 2 children. They were being PhD students, and they were studying abroad in Turkey. And so, you know, then they're harassed by the government. And then a report can be made about, oh, this is just some kind of bureaucratic malfeasance and so on, because, you know, obviously, you know, we may not agree with what the Chinese are doing, but they're just being concerned about the security, and, you know, these people are out of the country and so on. And the other family they reported they picked a family with 6 children. Now, 6 children in China, I don't care how you cut that cheese, you know, we all know that something weird's going on. And so it turned out, and then during the report, it turns out that this family escapes because a woman's going to be given an abortion, and they leave 4 children in China with relatives. And so you find in the report they're really not bad people because some circumstances made this happen maybe, but it gives you a bad taste. And so you're left with a confusion of, well, is China doing this in some justified way or not? And no, they're not. Well, what they're doing is they're displacing this people by, the Han Chinese totally outnumber all their minorities. So what they've been doing is they've been moving, basically doing what the Israelis do in their settlements. They move in and they make the area into their own ethnic universe, and then the people that are displaced can figure out, maybe do they have fast food in China? I don't know what they do for after they're displaced, but it's not right. So now this next one, well, let's play this and see what I've got in this one. Oh yeah, this first part is off a website. It's quiet and the sound won't start for a moment.
Xinjiang makes mountains of cotton, a fifth of the world's total. And they're waiting for us. We're turned back at checkpoints.
We'll pay.
Stopped from filming, questioned and followed.
Further behind is also following us.
This is one site we're trying to get to, a giant re-education camp. But more recently, something else has been built next door, a textile factory. Days after its completion, a large group of people can be seen being moved between the camp and the factory.
Wow, and this is the factory here. It's extraordinary.
From the ground, it's clear the factory and accommodation blocks are all now one single site, plastered with Communist Party slogans. But when we get out to film,
we are entitled to film in public anywhere in China.
China says these places are simply about creating jobs, but everywhere we go,
there's this extraordinary effort to stop us documenting any of it.
In Xinjiang, a whole culture is under suspicion. More than 1 million Uyghurs and other traditionally Muslim minorities are thought to have been swept into the camps, viewed by China as potential Islamist separatists. But each year, more than 2 million others are being gathered for something else. Giant new factories and textile mills, hundreds of them, where they face strict controls and political indoctrination. The first thing our workers have to learn is to love the Communist Party, this factory boss says. But now the BBC has seen evidence that shows Uyghurs are also being sent en masse into the cotton fields.
One day my family will disappear from this world.
Mahmoud, not his real name, left Xinjiang 3 years ago, but his family still lives there.
And my mom told me like she's picking the cotton for the government officers. It's like our duty to do that work. They will just go because they are so afraid of being taken to jail or somewhere else.
Newly uncovered documents show the scale. 150,000 pickers sent to one area, almost as many again organised for another. They're given ideological education, and the lazy, the authorities say, are being taught the glories of work.
The evidence suggests that the real intention here in Xinjiang is the dismantling of an entire culture,
and it's rebuilding through the total control of people's families, their faith, their thoughts, and on a massive scale across the fields and factories of this region in the work that they do. In a written statement, the Chinese government said workers from all ethnic groups in Xinjiang choose their jobs according to free will and signed contracts in accordance with the law. It said accusations of forced labour were completely fabricated. As we leave Xinjiang, we pass this prison camp complex, thought to contain multiple factory buildings. It's the first independent footage of this truly colossal site, a final chilling reminder that here, mass incarceration and mass labour are closely connected. John Sudworth, BBC News, Xinjiang.
Yes.
But why is China doing this? After all, Xinjiang is China's territory, isn't it? It's because the Chinese government, or the CCP, the Communist Party of China, is a Han-majority ethno-state that suppresses minorities. Don't get confused with American identity politics. We're talking about a country that is over 90% of one ethnic group, and what they say goes. They can try to pretend like there's 56 dancing, happy ethnic minorities, but in fact they're nothing more than a novelty for Han Chinese entertainment. China likes to keep up a facade of naming certain provinces autonomous regions, but what that actually means is that those regions are in fact so not autonomous that they're under twice as much, if not more, surveillance than a normal Han population province. You see, the Chinese government doesn't like when cultures are different to the majority Han culture, so they oppress different people groups with the utmost brutality. It truly baffles me that people that adhere to principles of socialism or look at China as a shining example of a beacon of socialism would actually celebrate China's treatment of minorities. If you're the kind of person who believes in equality for everyone, you shouldn't look at China as the example of a successful country. It's a racist, brutal ethno-state. The Uyghur people in Western China happen to be the most different from what you'd consider a normal Chinese person. What with their own culture, language, and religion. So China feels the need to restrain them in every way possible. It's a modern-day genocide in 2021, and China's getting away with it. China has the tightest control over this area of the country than any place in the entire world. It's very similar to North Korean surveillance, but with much more money and much more technology. We don't have the thousands of refugees that we see from other countries because China is not Syria. It can keep people's mouths shut, monitor them, and keep them inside of the borders of China, and then corrals them into concentration camps if there's any suspicion of them breaking the rules. And what are the rules? Pretty much just existing. Yes, there's tribunals, yes, it's in the media, but what can we actually do to stop China? It seems like most people actually want to just keep buying cheap crap on Amazon. Some people read a sad headline and then they move on and go about their day. And that's the way the world works. But you have to understand that these people in Xinjiang, they have no options left. There's no platform for their voices. China censors everything. It's already bad enough to be a Chinese citizen behind the Great Firewall of China and to be blocked from the rest of the internet, but especially if you're a Uyghur person in Xinjiang. You see, it's a crime of second-degree terrorism simply for a Uyghur to use a VPN to post something on the internet.
Yeah, it's something to mention about this whole thing is first that they're the first country that have used state-of-the-art data technology and digital technology to surveil, to spy on such a population. You drive in a car, there's a mandatory placement of a dashboard cam, but the dashboard cam is not pointed outwards, it's pointed towards the passengers, and everything is recorded and everything can be inspected or looked at any particular time. You don't know when they're watching you or not. There's cameras on the street that are like every 50 meters in some cases. They really have a strong data, big data operation that surveils huge amounts of data every second to sift through and find anybody who's even used a Muslim greeting or anything like that. As to what you said about that article, whether that made it look like it's voluntary. Well, in some cases, and I don't know if that's something that also changed with time or changes in time, but in some cases people were given an offer that they couldn't refuse. So they're voluntarily picking between going to a re-education camp so that their families don't suffer more, or that they don't lose all their income ability and starve to death. So it's not really much of an option. It's just kind of horrifying, and yeah, it just really is upsetting, and the fact that the world is not at the point where we can even fully have this addressed. There's no strong political will to tackle China because of their increasing amount of influence in the world, their economic power, in their political influence in various parts of the world. So it's just very sad for this population to be under such siege and not be able to have any voice or anything in their for their protection.
Yes. You know, in this last video, actually, what I did was I edited a BBC report, condensed it, put it in there, and then I put another one, and on that slide I listed the sources. One of them is a former English teacher, Lohai, and that was the second report, and I basically agreed with everything he said, so I put that one in there. And I started out that video with, it looked like a boring slideshow, and it's quiet. And what that is, that's a website, was listed on the top of that slide, that you go there, and it's a website dedicated to the Uyghur issues. And on that website was a short video that's well worth watching, and it is on a separate slide all by itself. I think this one may be it. Oh yes, I think you've got it up there, Amos. So let's play that one next, and then we'll want to probably go back to the divided families ones and do that one. So
right.
Start that one up.
мұсылман ұлтын жою керек, мұсылманның жаңағы жазуын, мұсылман киімін бәрін жоғалту керек, жаңағы бірыңғай Қытай болу керек деген жоспарлаған.
The Chinese government has long treated the Turkic Muslim population of Xinjiang with disdain and hostility. It considers their distinct identity, their religion, their culture, their language, as evidence of political disloyalty, of separatism. And since the new party secretary, Chen Chuanguo, came to power in the region 2 years ago, the authorities have stepped up their Strike Hard campaign, which is designed on paper to eradicate terrorist threats, but in reality is being used to justify massive abuses across the region, including the establishment of political education camps in which people are forced to swear their loyalty to the party and the government. There may be up to 1 million people being held in these camps, and it doesn't seem to matter that there's no legal basis for arbitrarily detaining people and forcing them to go through this kind of re-education.
Барлық үйден бәріне түрмеге кіргізіп ешқандай себепсіз алып кеткен.
Ешқандай көрмедім да, не бір дауысын естімедім. Соныменен ол аз деп өніңгөйін мына 13 жастағы қызымды да саяси үйренуге кіргізіп кетіпті.
Our recent research shows that life inside the political education camps and life in Xinjiang in general are actually not so very different.
Бірақ бізде дінді қыса бастады. Хижаб таққандарды, мындай оранғандарды шетінен ұстай бастады.
Қазақ тілін өтпейтіндіктен ұрпағым Қытай тілінде жаңағыдай өтетіндіктен кейін келешегі ұрпақтарымыз Қытай болып кетпеу үшін келді.
A number of scholars and journalists have described Xinjiang today as being the contemporary police state. The region is awash in security forces, in checkpoints, metal detectors. It's almost impossible to do anything outside the line of the authorities' sight.
Камера деген жетеді. Мысалы, бір сағатта жететін жеріңе азыр деген жарым күнде әрең жетесің. Ана жерге барып бір түсі удостоверениең көзіңді, денеңді тексерте берсең.
10 метр жерге жүрсең, бір сақшы қана одан бітті-ау десең, тағы 10 метр жерде сен сол нені қолың ұстап жүресің, жан қалтаңа самайсың қалтаңа. Кешке шейін тексереді біз. Қандай өмір сүреміз?
Yes, that's a good video. That website is kind of heavy on the oppression from the religious point of view, and which is true. That's what's going on. But really, the bigger picture is to try to actually eliminate the people, and that the definition of that is genocide. But before we get much further into those questions, let's go to slide 27. We'll watch that one because this one's going to get more into the personal aspect of the breaking up of families and what's going on. And we've mentioned the security state there, and I'll jump ahead a little bit and just mention my impression is that it's not very professional. They're using all the tools of surveillance, all the tools of technology. They're using algorithms, which are not good algorithms. It's a bunch of amateurs playing with very powerful toys, and it's bureaucratized. So horrible things have to be happening. You've got 1 to 3 million people. Nobody's really clear about how many people, but the number is massive. And so let's watch this. The particular, you see this woman up, you'll see her in the video, very good. She's not acting, but she's, if she was an actress, she would be doing a very good job. So let's watch this one.
It's very sad. Oops.
Although they've cracked down and censored these emoji videos because the Chinese government doesn't want these to get out to the general public. The Chinese government doesn't want people to know what is happening in this very last-ditch attempt effort to try to get some information out there, to try to get the world to pay attention. These women put it all on the line. And despite them being censored for doing so, that hasn't stopped new trends from happening, which is now where women are just crying in front of photos of men in their lives that have been taken away, whether it be their fathers or uncles, brothers, relatives. People that they love have been removed and put into camps. This is desperation. These Uyghur women have no platform, no voice, no opportunity to share actually what happened because of China's brutal authoritarian regime and the surveillance state it's created. So all they can do is show you their tears in front of their lost loved ones. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see these kind of messages in a bottle, so to speak, going out there only to fall mostly on deaf ears. It's the least we can do to try to spread their message and give them a little bit of hope that maybe at some point things will get better and the Chinese government will be brought to justice.
Yeah, disguising their resentment as something else so that they can get it out there. It's
Right.
profoundly
There's
sad.
two methods that were on that video. One was the women, get in front of a picture and do a green screen thing like we're doing right now to show that their husband is not with them. And the other thing, which was too small for people to see, but it's in, this is a clip from a much larger video. And what they do is they send out emojis and they tell their life stories with these emojis. Like they'll show, you know, the heart and a couple. So they fall in love, they get married, then they show a child, then they show the child taken away. And so they're able to show the heartbreak of their life story through these emojis. And one emoji I found particularly disturbing was a woman at the end shows it's the smiling face with sunglasses that we all know. And what that means is, well, I'll kind of make a little story myself, just so you get clear what this means. A Han Chinese official sees a young Uyghur company. He finds the wife very attractive. So he sends the husband off to a work camp. And then he moves himself into the wife's house. And that's what that emoji means, that a government official has taken the place of the husband in the family. One thing about, not covered in any of this, but there were other, in other videos I watched and so on, there is a sexual exploitation in all this. So, the Uyghur women are being used, and the power that the dominant Chinese have over them allows, rampant abuse. You don't get, how many hundreds of thousands of people are involved in this. They're not all angels. So you just imagine, you've got the entire spectrum from just violation of civil rights and being forced to be slave labor to, horrible things that probably make you wish you weren't alive. So that's what's going on there. And so we'll go on to 29 now. And 29 is, this book has not yet been released. And over on the right, we'll play a short segment of it when I'm finished talking about what it is. And it's a very long, and the clip we're going to watch isn't very long, but I watched the whole thing. There's a bookstore in Washington, D.C. called Poetry and Prose, and they do a lot of really good author interviews where people go in and they sit down in chairs and they listen to an author talk about his book, and then the whole thing's videoed, and I watch them here and there. And I'm going to read this to you right now. This is what I'm going to read. You can see it on your screen. And this promotes his book. I thought it did a very good job, though, so I'll read it. Blocked from facts and truth, under constant surveillance, surrounded by a hostile alien police force, Xinjiang's Uyghur population has become cursed, oppressed, outcast. Most citizens cannot discern between enemy and friend. Social trust has been destroyed systematically. Friends betray each other. Bosses snitch on employees. Teachers expose their students, and children turn on their parents. Everyone is dependent on a government that nonetheless treats them with suspicion and contempt. Welcome to the perfect police state. And the author makes a point in this that it's really perfect not because the technology is perfect and doesn't make mistakes. It's perfect because the people have no power and don't know what's going on. And it's perfect from the sense of being 100% effective. So, yeah. So, the technology that's going on over there and the way the people are being watched, it's something like right out of Minority Report. Some of these algorithms that are being used, well, I don't know if we'll see. I know it was in one video I watched, and it's Minority Report. They're like, oh, somehow a algorithm figured out, like, if you're taking out your garbage at 2 a.m, that you might be a terrorist, and then the algorithm triggers you for arrest, and then people actually come and arrest you. It's crazy, but you know, this is what happens when you marry technology with inappropriately with this kind of stuff.
Another movie that comes to mind in that context is Brazil, where a fly falls onto the printout and they come and arrest the rogue person.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So what do we have next here?
So about the 21st century nature of you know, this perfect police state, as you call it in the title. Talk us through some of the technologies that we're seeing, some of the methods that are being pioneered by the Chinese, and your sense of how this can be replicated or transplanted in other contexts elsewhere.
So one of the, you know, I guess oddly terrifying things about the Chinese tactics in Xinjiang and nationwide actually, is that in 2005 China started its surveillance. So it started its surveillance. I'm having trouble kind of defining this because it's not a single surveillance system, but this is like a collection of systems that have been pieced together over the years. And so this collection of systems was called Skynet. Which is, you know, for those of you who have seen Terminator, you know, when you go to China, you're essentially being surveilled by the Skynet system. And you know, obviously, I don't think there was a Chinese bureaucrat somewhere who was a Terminator fan and thought, hey, this is a great idea. Let's name our surveillance system Skynet and, you know, repress the Uyghurs with that. You know, there's a Chinese context to that name that goes kind of deep, and I don't need to get into it here. But you know, the irony of that name is just that it just defines just this foreboding, you know, this like menacing foreboding sense of how the surveillance system works. One of the Uyghurs who, you know, was very well informed, someone who I actually interviewed, one of the only people who I actually could talk to in Xinjiang in 2017 as these crackdowns were happening. I had a very, very worldly, well-informed assistant who told me about how what's happening in Xinjiang is it's a panopticon. And a panopticon, this is an idea that was created by the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham, and it also has many echoes in George Orwell and, you know, a lot of these sci-fi dystopian novels from the past 50 years. And so the panopticon is this prison system in which, you know, it's a circular prison, and in the outer circle there are all the cells, and you know all the people in the prison are you know in their cells that go in the circle, and in the center of the circle, looking outwards at all the cells, is a guard post, a sentry post, but it's constructed in a way so that like nobody can actually see the guard. And what it does psychologically to people is that it makes them fear that they are constantly being watched, but they don't know when or where or how. I mean, you just don't know, like, is the guard standing at your side of this circle and looking at you directly? Does he have a, you know, does he have a telescope? Does he, you know, is he like holding up, you know, some kind of audio device to listen in on your conversations with your fellow cellmates? Like, you just have no idea what is happening behind the veil. And it could even be no one's there. I mean, it could just be it could be a Wizard of Oz scenario where there's just this, you know, there's some pretender just, you know, dozing off who's not the real deal, who doesn't really care about surveillance. But that still terrifies people because they're so uncertain about whether or not they're being watched at any given moment. So this is the essence and nature of the Skynet system of China. I did find a lot of evidence in my reporting in both written documentation that I found. I did get a number of leaks in the process of this, and also my interviews with some technology workers who had worked on this, you know, this surveillance system in Xinjiang. You know, they told me that actually behind the veil, the system was not all that sophisticated, that actually they didn't totally understand how it worked. They were using crude algorithms. You know, they just had bad data at times. I mean, it's like they would gather so much data that nobody could figure out what data was worthwhile and what was garbage, and nobody could really figure out, like, how does the AI system find a correlation, you know, between someone who like walks in the back door of their house, and that means that they are going to commit a terrorist crime in a week. Like these are the kinds of correlations that the AI would make for them. And so so like, yeah, I mean, like that's it's kind of like goofy that that the AI would think that, but that's the irony of this perfect police state. I find it just so ironic that the perfect police state is perfect because of its imperfections, because it's not perfect. Like, I just think that if this system were actually perfect, then people would be able to figure out how it works, and they would find ways to not go to a concentration camp. But the nature of the Chinese system is that it's like this Kafka bureaucracy overload, where it's just everyone is a potential terrorist, just arrest arbitrarily, send people to camps arbitrarily, and it terrifies people, and it terrifies them into snitching on other people, making up stories, get your neighbor sent to the camp so you're not sent, you'll be more trustworthy that way. So it's like, it's a system that consumes itself, and it's consumed a lot of Uyghur society in the process. So that's really, that's how I would define the core of the Chinese strategy in this region.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the aspect to it that really matters to us is what's happening in China right now with the Uyghurs could happen, is probably going to happen in a lot of different ways all over the world, because the technology is seductive and people in power are going to use it. Anyway, oh, and one other thing before we go on is we saw the video about the cotton being picked and the textile being made, and one issue is this cotton shirt. It may have been made by slave labor. I don't know, and that's something else that's affecting us directly, because these people are being used. This is slavery. There's no other way to put it. Now, okay, moving on. The word genocide has come up. Now, Anderson Cooper, in his Milquetoast report, he said some governments have described this as genocide, and a lot of other weak reports question whether or not it's a genocide or not. And so I looked up the definition, and more importantly, I thought about it too, and I realized that, okay, what do I have here? Let's see. Let me see what slide I'm on. Okay. Yeah, this slide, we pretty much know where this slide was taken. That's obviously black and white. That's obviously from a Nazi camp. And this matches pretty much what we think of genocide is. And, there are others. Let's go to the next slide. And there are other reports that, similar situations where, there's lots of mass death and a lot of killing. And so we think that's what genocide is. But that's not what genocide is. These things are genocides, yes, but genocide is the deliberate, you're deliberately erasing people. And if you're going to do that, you're going to kill somebody. You're not going to eliminate the national identity and change the way people live, change their language, change their system of writing, change where they work, break up their families. I don't have to go on. You're not going to do that without killing somebody. So whether or not the definition of killing belongs in the definition of genocide is really kind of a moot point. You can't have one without the other. So the question is how much, and in determining how much, if it's there, it's genocide. So that kind of answers the question. Yeah.
So Keith, basically the destruction of the Native American or Aborigines basically was a genocide, not because people were killed. Of course they were killed, but because they eliminated this ethnicity in terms of existence, national existence.
Amos, it's funny you should say that, because about halfway into this report, a bell went off in my head, and I realized that part of the reasons Americans may have a lot of trouble understanding what's going on in Wuhan is because of what we'll see on the next slide. And this just came to me. You know, you've got a native population, and you've got a civilization meeting it, and that winds up in displacing the people. So we have our Native Americans. They met civilization. You know, go west, young man, on the old west trains, and that led to you know, the cities. Now it looks like I have the two swapped. I should have the cities switched around there. Seattle should be on top because that's the American story, and I screwed up. Is I have the Uyghurs on the bottom, and they're taking the high-speed train instead of the old choo-choo train. And oh, thank you, Amos. Now we got it right. And the other city, I think, is the capital city of Xinjiang. But one thing that is really important that this slide brings out is the displacement, because by settling, China is very deliberately settling enough Han Chinese in the area so that the Uyghurs will become a minority in their own land, where they're not a minority, you know, or they weren't a few years ago. I think they are now. So, you know, there's very definite parallels to, I think, the American story between Chinese story, you know. So let's move on to the next one.
But before we do, I just wanted to note that while watching and reading about it, it struck me how much it reminded me of things that were going on with the Holocaust. And I'm not comparing like the scale of the murder or anything like that. What I'm alluding to is things like the sights of these people being like ushered with their packages on their backs to the camp, like them having this thing on their chest, a big ribbon thing, like kind of like identifying them as ethnic Uyghurs, which reminds me of the star, the yellow star, and stuff like that. It basically there's so much parallel. The fact that they often staged the Chinese media often stages these shows of how the local population is happy. And they're like, all they're doing in these re-education camps are learning how to dance and stuff like that, and they're staging these shows for the media to show like that everything's okay. Just as Theresienstadt was as a concentration camp was assembled purely for propaganda purposes, and then disassembled and all its people sent to death camps. So it's so reminiscent. There's so much similar tactics that it's eerie and really frightening.
Yeah, you know, comparing it to the Nazi situation, I think that the strong parallel there is the slave labor, where you've got factories, dormitories, and ikma free, work will set you free, and that's very much what's going on in China is the slave labor. And again, we don't know if our clothes were made by slave labor or not. Yeah. So bringing up the history again, is there was a riot in about 2009, and it was a very violent riot. About 100 people were killed. It was, you know, the Uyghurs had just had enough, and they erupted. And so that led to a huge crackdown and executions. And again, there's a parallel to American history. And this one actually has a personal kind of story here. I have to get my notes up so I can read it. Okay. Yeah, the execution of, okay, you have an unrest and then you put it down violently and you execute the people to make sure they don't do this again. And this has happened in American history. And okay, I'll just get into it. I don't know how to start, so I'll just start talking. originally I'm from Minnesota, so my mother's family actually, where they were pioneers, and like one ancestor was like the first woman born in this particular county. So go way back in the city, and a grandfather of my grandfather on my mother's side had come out somewhere from the East Coast with 4 other people to pick out a place to build a lumber mill. And so he did that. Then he came out and he is doing his farming thing, is connected somehow with this family business that's going on. There were brothers involved and so on. There, my mother's maiden name is the same as the town where this mill was. Anyway, so I have this grandfather of a grandfather, and he used to, when he first went out to Minnesota, he was trapping along the river, and what he would do is he would always leave some game for the Indians because he knew they were being starved to death. He did not approve of this. This story came through my grandmother and my mother to me, and he got along with the Indians, and you know, he let them hunt on his land, which a lot of the other settlers wouldn't do at all. And so he had a good relations with the locals. And this Indian war, the Dakota Indian War, broke out, and the story goes, some of his friends from town had to actually go and physically remove him from his settlement, you know, his homestead, because he figured he got along with the Indians well enough that he'd be safe. And it's a good thing that they took him to town, because you know, nobody was safe. It was you know, massive violence everywhere, and the only way to survive it was to be in the town. So that's kind of a personal history of you know, of an American story. And it's kind of off topic, but we could play the video. I really put it up because I wanted to get a picture of the execution of the 38 Dakota Indians that were executed. It was just before an actual picture probably could have been taken. Maybe there's one that is in existence. I don't know. But it just shows, it just documents the execution. It's pretty short. We can watch it and return to our topic.
Yep.
Oh, we have to watch that one on YouTube because it's age restricted.
That fateful day, they were led out of the prison compound. They were shackled and chained together. They had hoods on them. The women began wailing and weeping. One of the prisoners, in a loud voice, said, "Namach umpo metakwepi, hear me, my people. Today is not a day of defeat. It is a day of victory. For we have made our peace with our Creator, and now go to be with Him forever. Remember this day to tell our children so they can tell their children that we are people who die a noble death. Do not mourn for us. Rejoice with us. It's a good day to God." And then he lifted up his voice and began singing.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the American history. And one thing about the Uyghurs is they are good horsemen. So one can wonder if 100 years from now, if there won't be a band of Uyghurs riding into one of their cities saying, "Oh, this is where they executed so many of our people," because the parallel is pretty clear. So I hope the world wakes up to this. I hope more people pay attention, but I doubt that it will happen. We're involved economically with China. It was pretty clear from the Anderson Cooper report, which was doing this report just really fascinating, because I watched that report. I liked the Anderson Cooper report, didn't see a thing wrong with it. Then the more and more I get into this, I began to hate that report and realize that this was something that was trying to incite some kind of humanitarian sympathy without telling you what the problem really is, or what's going on, or how much we're involved with it, or any of that. So that's where we are with the Uyghurs.
Yeah, and with current political situation, I don't see any end to it. I don't know. China is expected to be the biggest global economy in a few years, and it's very I'm very pessimistic that they can survive as a culture, as an ethnicity. I think the fact that they've taken in that project of diluting this ethnicity to a point of disappearance may be successful, unfortunately, and that's very disheartening.
I hate to agree with you, but I do. It's horrible. So moving on. Yeah, Monday. It was the hottest day I've ever experienced in Seattle. And I spent the day moving around and I have an air-conditioned car. So I ran a lot of errands. But one thing that happened was, this is about a couple hundred miles north of Seattle, and the town burned to the ground. And let's see what we have here. Yeah. Okay, the village of Lytton broke an 83-year-old national heat record, and the whole town had to evacuate, and the town burned to the ground. And we have some video. Let's just jump to slide 36 and play that.
About 6:30, 7 o'clock, our EOC rallied at our recreational center, and as the evacuees were arriving from Lytton, we're about 63 kilometers north. We've registered as of early this morning over 185. There are a lot of families, relatives, and friends from the Lytton area up here in our area. Our hearts go out to them. It's devastating. We have our rec center gymnasium, which is our registration, and that's full of food, clothing, all kinds of personal items that are required, because many of the people had to rush, and some even without their shoes, believe it or not. I'm really proud and pleased of our businesses, all of which have opened, our pharmacies, and the like, and also individual residents coming and rushing down with all kinds of food and the like. We've got our gymnasium set up, but we also have the arena set up with about 80 cots. Many, because of the heat, are sleeping outside and enjoying it. Last night, in checking with a number of them, enjoying the sleep, mind you, but not so much, obviously, why they're here. And our campground is open, and we have many of the firefighters from the McKay Creek also staying at our campground. So they're also at some of our First Nation band locations. And we're just working hard to get all the registrations up to date so that we can account for everybody. It's emotional, it's devastating, and it is. And we're here for them. I'm proud of our staff and our council and all our residents and everyone that has helped out. It's made it so much easier, as difficult as the situation is. And we're here to support all the people of Lytton, the town, and the local First Nations surrounding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happened there, the town burned to the ground. It's the start of fire season here. So what happens is you say you get a thunderstorm, or you get a thunderstorm and starts a fire, and then that creates smoke, which produces a special kind of cloud called a pyrocumulonimbus cloud. And I know I didn't say that right. Anyway, you get this cloud that is generated by fire, which makes more lightning, which makes more fire, which means that for the next 3 months around Seattle, I'll be smelling smoke in the air and getting a headache, and it'll be going on for a really long time because it's going to be hot. This is going to be a year to remember, unfortunately. So that's our kind of climate report for the week. There a lot more has happened, and that's probably what I'll concentrate more on the future is to bring us up to date on what's happening with climate issues.
Yeah.
But
and on another note, we had news of the CFO of the Trump organization being indicted on offenses related to tax evasion and tax crime. It is hard to see yet what the implication will be on Trump. Obviously, everybody around him has been by now implicated in criminal offenses, and yet he has not yet been. Now, the question is whether this is going to have any effect whatsoever in 2024. He's already stated that this is his regular witch hunt claims, and how it's unfair to him and everything. And some say that he's relieved that so far the attack has been on his CFO. Basically, the CFO, the part of the accusations is that he's like falsified. He was being paid extra through the Trump administration by claiming that his apartment, that his high rent apartment was actually resided by the Trump organization, not by his family, and such things. And he's just basically been paid in various ways, like off the books, evading tax, and that's now he's in hot water. So Weisselberg's in hot water, and the question is whether they can ratchet up the pressure on him in order to give up information about Trump. As you remember, they tried to do that with other people around Trump, but at that point, Trump was still president. Although Michael Cohen did cooperate, and that still didn't help convict or indict Trump. So the question is it? What do you think, Keith? Is it going to have any real result on Trump, or is it just going to be one of those failed attempts that don't move the needle at all?
Well, I'll say it won't move the needle much. There's going to be a lot of talk through the months, the years about Trump, but really, are people really going to go after him? I don't think so. He's too much part of the system. To go after him means exposing other people. It means looking at our stuff, and nobody wants to do that. So people will scream about Trump. They'll call him a bad person, but I really don't think they'll do anything. That's my opinion. You wanted an opinion, you got one.
Yeah, what's disturbing is that so far Democrats have not yet really put the pedal to the metal in terms of going after Trump and his surroundings and the Republican Party in terms of the insurrection that was attempted on January 6th, and the lies that they've been sticking to, and increasingly so, in terms of the election fraud argument. And we know that now 70% of Republicans at this point already believe that this election has been fraudulent or stolen, in spite of the fact that none of this has been had gotten any traction on the ground in terms of evidence. And I think that that's a big mistake, to leave everything to the criminal aspects of like tax evasion or whatever, even though that's how they got the mafia people in the history of criminality. I don't think that's sufficient. In terms of Trump, I think you really have to address this anti-democratic actions of people in government, and start cracking down on that, because that is our danger, our biggest danger in just a few short years. If we fail to address that, and we keep saying that on this program, and nothing seems to be happening. They're doing the infrastructure program, they're doing this, they're doing that, but they're not really going after full force after what happened at January 6th. They indicted a few people who were on the ground, like just part of it, but nowhere higher up. No, they have not yet done a full investigation. They've yet to figure out whether the police structure was somehow involved, which appears to be very, very convincing. That argument that there were higher ups that enabled this to the insurrection to breach the Capitol.
Well, a lot of things happened. There are probably many different truths, all true, about what happened there.
But they're sleeping on their guard. They have to address it, because this is going to explode again in 2-4 years, and then it's going to be even worse, and we may lose our democracy.
I hope something happens. I hope Trump experiences consequences. But you asked me earlier. My feeling is I don't think something will happen. Would I like something to happen? Oh, you betcha. I would like to see this toad get what he deserves. But you're just going against so much stuff. We don't have it in the deck, but one thing I could have thrown in the deck, I ran across a interview that some news agency did of it was a fake job interview, and they wanted to interview this guy. He's a lobbyist for oil companies. And so during this interview, he starts talking about the various congressmen that the oil industry has in their pocket. And number one on the list is Joe Manchin. And
it's not surprising.
So you've got if you're going to go after Trump, you're going to get a lot of people who are not going to want you to do that. And that's why I say I just don't see things happening. Anything somebody wants us to go after Trump, somebody else is going to come along and say and mess him up. That's so. Like I say, I hope he gets what he deserves. I don't see it happening.
I guess it's our business to pressure and bring it up and keep talking about it, because it's not happening on its own.
Which brings, one thing that happens when people get passionate about something, and they may say start a program like we are doing right now, and then they'll get the message out there, and they'll say, okay, well, I got the message out there. No, that's all I got to do. The information's out there for people. No, that's not how it works. It doesn't matter if the story's been told. You got to tell the story over and over and over again. It's not a matter for, I hope we're not brainwashing people, but you just got to put it out there and remind people again, or they won't pay attention to it.
Yeah. And just to mention the slide for today, I played a little with the graphics here. This is Trump tossing the prison uniforms to Weiselberg, just as he has done in Puerto Rico after the hurricane, and obviously he's happy to sacrifice anyone else as long as he doesn't get into trouble. So, yet to see where this is all going to go. And in terms
well,
of,
he does have a talent for getting other people into trouble.
Yeah, he doesn't have any, like, you can't be loyal to him and expect anything from it. It's
he'll throw you under
he'll
the
throw
bus.
you under the bus, yeah, in the first second. And here's Trump saying, I don't know the Trump organization. I've never heard of the Trump organization. I don't know Alan Weisenberg. I think he used to get me coffee.
I know nothing. Yeah.
And this is Trump saying, Weisselberg, your next payment will be in the form of a scholarship to Penn State. Oops, I meant State Penn.
He'll be lucky if he gets that.
Yeah.
From Trump.
Yep. And here's the Republicans saying, I would like to end the conservatorship with my abusive daddy.
Yeah, now they got their 35% tax break. They don't need him anymore.
Oh boy, yeah, no, they need him. They keep needing him, and they'll keep sticking to him. So that's not going to change. So we're down. Yeah, I forgot to mention we're down to the cartoon segment of our program. Here's Abbott in Texas saying, "Build the grid. Heck no, we're gonna build the wall. That's my number one priority. Get my message out there to every home in Texas." And his aide says, "I would, sir, but the power is out in every home."
Well, I have a hope in this. They're trying the Trump, what worked for Trump, they're trying it out for themselves.
Yeah.
And the hope is there's only one Trump. What worked for him might not work for other people. I keep my fingers crossed.
We will see, but the number one threat that I see now is Florida's governor, and I'm really concerned about that. And here's the school closure for lead and asbestos, and an active shooter drill is going on, and the woman there is saying, I'm worried that children are being exposed to critical race theory. And that's reference to the recent war on critical race theory. Well, maybe not so recent, but
yeah.
Whenever they don't have anything else to say.
I spent some of the week reading up on critical race theory just so I could talk about it intelligently if I ever have to. And so we won't talk about it anymore. And that's the intelligent thing.
And Bill Cosby has been released.
Oh, yes. It's amazing what $400 million will do, isn't it? You can rape 60 women and, drug them. And everybody can know about it. But if you got $400 million, it can all go away.
And Lady Justice says about it, Bill Cosby is free and Britney Spears isn't. That tells you all you need to know about how the justice system treats women.
Yeah. I saw some issues. I listened to the Britney Spears interview, or not an interview, but the statement she made to the judge. It was pretty interesting. And very much I could see what I said last week. The money has actually got her imprisoned. Her money has her prisoner. Amazing.
Yeah. And here's the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress, and they're trying to launch infrastructural deal, and the kids say, Now they're arguing over how much to pay for the matches. And that is so
Well, if they
true.
keep arguing long enough, there won't be anything to do.
And and the concern is that I think Biden's initial impulse to not pass this bill, any infrastructure bill that does not include the Green New Deal in some form, is correct, and I hope they don't go that route, because just passing an infrastructure bill for whatever for itself is a mistake in this day and age when we have to address the global climate crisis.
Yeah, by the time they get done with it, the only infrastructure may be in the title. I'm kidding, of course, but bridges need to be fixed. A lot of stuff needs to get done that nobody's going to argue about. But yeah, if that's all that gets done, don't call it an infrastructure bill. That's deceptive.
Yeah.
So.
And here's another one with Biden. Great news. Congressional Republicans and Democrats finally agree on a possible concept for a theorized idea for tentative framework for an infrastructure bill. Trump sighs and says it's going to be a long summer, and I have that feeling as well.
Yeah.
Here's something about UFO for our UFO enthusiast audience, and Republicans are reading the report and saying, so that's what happened to all those missing Trump votes.
You see up in the corner there, that little alien statue's got a MAGA hat on.
Yes, it does, yeah. And here's Republicans whitewashing U.S. history. It's a literal take on that. You want to read this one?
Revenge of the Anti-Vaxxers. A true Q believer explains. President Phony thinks he's so great. He'll get 100% of the country vaccinated by the 4th of July. Well, boo-hoo, mister. I listen to science. You're not even going to come close. Why? Because some of us aren't dumb enough for you to fall for your hoax, President Jerk. My only regret is the doctors say I probably won't be around to see him crying like a little whiny piglet, because I'm going to make his quota, and he's going to die. Yes. Well, you can't say I told you so, because they're already dead.
That's right. And yeah, it's to me, it's very concerning. I think we mentioned last week there was news that in Israel, which is like one step ahead of us because the early vaccination and the fact that they vaccinated nearly 80% of the population, the news were that out of those who succumbed to the new Delta variant, 50% were already fully vaccinated, which means just one thing, that the new vaccination is not preventing that getting COVID-19 Delta, and so we're yet to see admission in that regard from the pharmaceuticals and the U.S. CDC, but I think that's gonna come inevitably. Meanwhile, the population that's not being vaxxed, it's going to be spreading like a wildfire among them, and I only predict a new closures round because the danger is that hospitals are going to be overflowing and overwhelmed by those who did not get the vaccinations and are now succumbing to the COVID, the new COVID Delta, and along with others who may be on it's supposed to, according to the claim, the vaccination, even when you get COVID, Delta or other, the effects are lesser, but we don't know yet for sure what is the long-time effects such as the myocarditis and such. We don't know how those are affected by the vaccination, and so there's still danger. So I can only imagine that in a month or so, maybe 2 months, we'll be back to mask wearing and limitations on crowd sizes and stuff like that. But enjoy it while you can, folks. Just
I hope
enjoy
you're
the
wrong.
summer.
I hope we don't go back to that. You know,
Yeah.
I hope people can get it together. I mean, I'm just talking because I know they won't. It would be nice if people got it together and wore their masks as long as they were supposed to, which is when we know it's gone. Giving up, you know, it's like, this is like the tortoise and the hare. You know, the hare runs ahead of the tortoise, and then he stops a foot from the finish line. He takes a nap. You know, what kind of point is that? You know, people have got to think of other people besides themselves. You know,
That too, yeah.
And do whatever it is they can do to be part of the COVID fighting team that we all should belong to. And when this first started a year ago, I read a report that in 1919, during the Spanish flu, that I think the fines for not wearing a mask in San Francisco was $500. And when I read this a year ago, I thought, whoa, $500 in 1919 money, which would probably be like 10 grand a day. I don't know. You know, this is a big deal. And like, how could these people be so cruel, you know, or whatever? So here I am a year later, and I'm thinking, only $500? No, I'm kidding about that. But what my point is, I do understand why it had to be that big, because some people just don't want to cooperate. They consider, you could ask them to tie their shoe so they don't trip, and they would call it an affront on their freedom. So, you know,
I have to admit, and I understand.
Together.
I understand the fatigue people feel about this whole thing, and I have to admit that I have kind of laxed also with wearing masks and so forth. Even though I tried to do it only in open space, but that I've also been indoors with no mask or gone to restaurants at this point. But I'm doing it with the full understanding that I'm taking a certain amount of risk. There is maybe a low risk at this point because the Delta hasn't spread out more than like 15% or so yet, but I am aware that there's a minute chance that something would happen. So that's nature.
What I do is when I'm talking to another person I know is vaccinated like I am, I wear my mask off the ear.
Mm-hmm.
That way I'm ready to put it on if somebody else walks by.
Yeah. All right, let's go on. So here's a real estate one, and here's a charming 1-bedroom home in your price range. That's a dog's house, and that's very much the situation nationwide. It's really a seller's market, and I couldn't resist adding this one as a realtor. Here we go. Marjorie Taylor is in the news. She went to a Holocaust museum, and now that she's been to the Holocaust museum and apologized, they're suggesting that she also go to the Museum of American History, Museum of African American Culture, and Women's Museum to enrich herself.
Yeah, my son was actually in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and he went to the Native American Museum, and he said it was really good.
It is.
Really
yeah, I've been there too. And here's the U.S. vaxxers. They're trying to get it up. Biden's looking at it at 70% almost. And in the meantime, the Republicans are looking at the Republicans still think the election was stolen. And they're saying, what's wrong with people? You'd think we could get more than 70%. Here's one about Rumsfeld.
Oh, here we
passed
go.
away
Yes.
this week.
Rummy.
Yeah. Well, hey, I like your style, says the devil. And Rumsfeld is on tour, showing his Methods of Torture book, and that's
this is a good point. I think I might want to avoid hell for the next eternity, because Donald will probably be there making improvements to the system. You know?
That's right. Yeah. Here's another one with the devil. Turn out you go to the great unknown with the soul. You have not the soul you might want or wish to have at a later time. Here, your key card breakfast is never. And yeah, Rumsfeld has really been like the face of the Bush administration's torture policy and other things that got us really deep in trouble in Iraq.
He lied to get us into a war, and many people died. That makes him a war criminal.
Who does it remind you besides Rumsfeld? He's almost like the reincarnation of McNamara.
Yeah. Okay, I see it.
Yeah. Here's the space program, where the billionaires of our time are shoveling money into their own space projects, while people are starving. And fortunately, people have not yet realized that when they talk about saving humanity, they mean saving a few humans who will become humanity, because that's what's going to be left.
Well, actually, I think they're just bullshitting. They're just they're almost trillionaires now. I mean, they're both worth over 180 billion. They both have part of the space program. They're in it for money. Musk is
yeah, of course they're in it for money, but they also want to survive the upcoming upheaval.
I think that's just a story, really.
Well, no, they want to survive it for sure, and their families.
They can survive it on Earth. They're not going to go anywhere.
They might. Yeah, that might be. They're shooting for. Why not shoot for the stars? You can maybe it will be successful, and they'll be able to live on Mars or on a space station, space biosphere or something. But they're trying. That doesn't cost them a penny, because they're getting all their money back from the taxpayers.
From the taxpayer, that's right. So if they get into a little financial trouble, they're going to be too big to fail. It's already happened to Bezos. He didn't get some contract, and so the Congress, passed a bill, gave him a bunch of money to make sure he stays in business, whatever. So the way it's going to work out is either way they're going to make out. And we, as a taxpayer, wind up getting the short end of the stick. The idea being that, a cheerleader for capitalists would say that the privatization of space gives us a better deal. And it's baloney. And it's 100% baloney. It's going to cost us more this way.
Of course, it always has. But so basically, folks, we're paying for these guys to survive. That's the bottom line of it. We are paying for them to survive and for us to perish. Oh, that's unfortunate. Here's one for.
Be liking it.
Here's one for the 4th of July. Is it weird that we celebrate America by purchasing a bunch of explosives made in a communist country?
Well, it's not exactly a communist country.
It's not. That's true. It's only by name.
Only by name. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's more of a fascist country at this point, but
yeah, that would be the appropriate description. You got capitalist mixed with state. That's what fascism is.
Yep. And that brings us to today's end of the program. Unless you have anything else, Keith?
No, that's it for me. But what are we going to do for a song?
Well, we don't have really a song for this for today. We did not pick one, so
we'll have to play last week's then.
Well, or we can just go out on a whimper. I like that better.
Or a bang.
So which one would you like? The last week's?
Sure.
All right.
You know, I actually thought we might pull up something by Roger Waters, because he's still very much in the news because people are really liking the way what he said about Zuckerberg. But I'm not sure. I would have put it in the deck, but I'm not sure about copyright issues, and so.
I'd like to post. I would like to. Maybe we'll post the latest video with Hedges reading from his essay, American Sadism, which is really
that
good.
was a very good talk. I watched it this week.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll repost it on the channel. We'll let you know if we do. All right, guys. So thanks for watching. Please don't forget to share on your social media and let your friends know about this channel, and we'll be happy to chat with you in upcoming shows. So hopefully next time Marcus is going to be with us, and we're looking forward to it.
Hope things go well with his aunt.
Yes, we do. All right. Here goes with Sleaford Mods and I Don't Rate You.
And if Marcus was here, we'd have a fresh song.
Bye, everybody.
Yo, me and Danny Olive. What's that triple list on that? What's that idea? Lift up black. List up no one, let's go, yo. Don't talk shit, stinks, po. I don't break you. She's up right now, that's what he said. Blokes that kiss us in the head. Blokes commercial boring twat. I don't really like things like that. I don't break you. Watch the cards, I've seen them drop. You're the everyman that's not. You're the picture, lovely table. Fuck off, wanker, famous teeth. I don't break you. I don't break you. I don't break you. I don't break you. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? What does it all mean? What you telling me that for? Losing with him for the law. I don't want no stars near me. I'm not fucking galaxy. I don't break you. Appropriate, make the run. I'll just look like anyone. I'll just do stuff dun. It's invested like that, right run out Paul. I don't break you. I don't need no castle run. I don't want a motorsport. I don't need no horses running. I don't need no princess abseiling down the fucker. I don't break you. I don't like them. I don't break you. I don't break you. I don't break you. Do you wanna sound cold? Do you wanna sound cold? Do you wanna sound cold? Well, you don't. Do you wanna sound cold? Do you wanna sound cold? Do you wanna sound cold? Well, you don't. I don't break you. don't like you.